What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live here on a Thursday night. We actually have some news to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about Joe Cronin being promoted to full-time general manager. We're going to talk about how the Blazers didn't really conduct a search at all. And then we'll talk some playoff action. And we'll hang out with you guys, take some questions. The good old off-season Blazers Uprise Live stream. We only have less than 5 days till draft lottery time, Eric. It felt like the days were going by slowly, and then the past 2 weeks, they've just been an absolute blur. And I'll get the exact numbers for you, because Tankathon has a nice little countdown. 4 days, 19 hours, 2 minutes, and 52 seconds until draft lottery night.
Until we either are doomed or are maybe have a way out of this mess.
Yeah, dude, honestly, okay, for me, it hasn't set in yet that it hasn't fully set in that we have sixth best odds. It just seems surreal because we're not used to this at all. So it's like, I know the draft lottery is 4 days from now and we have the sixth best odds and we could end up with the number one pick. It just doesn't feel real. It still doesn't feel real to me. So it's not going to feel, I don't think it's going to feel real until that stream is live. And Dame's going to the lottery. Dame Jr. announced it. He can put together sentences now. So that's cool. But Dame's going to be representing the Blazers at the draft lottery. That's the other news that came out today.
Yeah, awesome news. Once again, I mean, if you've been watching this channel through the previous offseason, you will know that we never panicked. We never thought Dame would be untrue to his own personal morals and character and stuff like that and just change up who he is and run from the grind. And this is just yet another affirmation that he is in this process with the Blazers, not going to fight against them, or he's not going to pull any crap about like, oh, you better do this or I'm going to leave, or it's not going to be wishy-washy anymore. He's in it no matter what happens, I think, at least for the time being. And I don't think, I mean, I'm pretty confident that he's going to go to the draft workouts and be really involved in this whole process. I think he's probably itching to get back on the floor, and he's even tweeted how he's going to show all the haters that they're dumb for not believing in him anymore. And so I'm really excited for him, and I think he's going to fall in love with some of these draft picks just like we do. And I don't think he'll mind us drafting someone in that spot and keeping him on this team. I think he feels like that'll be a good approach, even if a lot of people don't feel like that's the right way to go.
Yeah, that's the thing, is he's taking time out of his offseason to fly to Chicago. That's where it is, right?
Yeah, Chicago.
He's taking time out of his offseason to fly to Chicago to represent the Portland Trail Blazers while they try and get a high draft pick. And it's most likely that the pick falls a spot. But he's still taking time out of his, I mean, it's not summer yet, especially in Portland. It's been gloomy in May, but he's taking time out of his offseason, man, to go represent the Blazers at the lottery. Okay, so if anybody says, oh, if we draft somebody, Dame's going to want out, if anybody tries to say that stuff, then why the hell is he going to the draft lottery? He's obviously invested in this process. There's no questions about if Dame's going to want out this offseason. He's front and center representing the team, taking the time out when he does not have to. So, I mean, anybody that doesn't take the dude for his word is just ignoring reality at this point. So it's going to be cool to see him representing. I would love for CJ to represent the Pelicans because they have the Lakers pick. That would be cool. Yeah. And, I don't want the Pelicans to end up with the second pick, but imagine if CJ represents them, it comes down to the Pelicans and the Blazers. Imagine that.
Those two are standing there next to each other waiting to see who I didn't think about that. That'd be really cool.
That would be awesome. So shout out to Nate J. Dub. What's up, Nate? With the $5 dono says, what's up, guys? Thanks for the content. Fingers crossed for that top 3 pick. Go Blazers. Yeah, still hasn't set it. Like, I'm not nervous yet. That's how you know it hasn't set in for me. Appreciate the dono, Nate J. Dub. Is like, I'm not sitting here like, oh, please get a top 3 pick. I didn't realize it was 4 days from now. Like, I'm just so, like, not doing the daily content and all the stuff that I'm doing right now. I just played 3 hours of basketball, just hooped for a while. So, like, I haven't even thought about it. That's crazy, man. That is 4 days away. It just hasn't set in. I just don't know when I'm going to be nervous. I'm probably going to be nervous by the time they start announcing the picks, but before that, I'm actually been pretty chill. I thought I'd be just a wreck by now, honestly, with how bad I want, a couple specific guys. But here's the thing for me. This is going to be just a side note. I'm a Chet fan, obviously, and I've said that multiple times. I'm a Gonzaga fan, and he's the number one player on my board. But part of me is worried that if we get him, anytime he ever does anything bad, I'm just going to get trolled nonstop.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of cool not getting Chet.
Told you, Tori, he got worked in the post by Joel Embiid. Like, that never happens to anyone else.
Dude, that's what it will be. Yeah. And it's like, it's going to... Like, every time he does well, it's going to be phenomenal, but it's anytime he struggles or doesn't get a rebound or whatever, I'm going to hear it from, like, 20 people that just... It's just, I can see it being a headache next year having him on the team. Even though I think he'd do a really good job for this team, I know that there's going to be people that aren't fans of the pick and therefore will just, any chance they get to criticize him, they will, and they'll just hate on him, and that's just the way it's going to go. So I think that's part of the reason I'm not nervous, because it's like, if we get the number one pick, I'm going to be nervous because, like, are we going to take Chet? And then if we take Chet, is it going to be fun, or am I just going to have to hear a bunch of people trash talking him the whole time?
If we have both Chet and, well, let's say we got the number one pick and passed on Chet, would then you be the opposite with whoever we take?
No, I mean, like, I'm not down on any of these guys. Like, I'll root for Chet whichever team he goes to. He isn't going to the Lakers. So, like, I'll root for Chet if he's on a different team to have a good career. And then when we play him, I hope we beat him and Chet shows these Blazer fans what's up. But, like, I'm rooting for whoever we're drafting. I mean, I'm high on Ben Carroll. I'm high on Jabari Smith. I'm high on Chet. They all provide different things. I'm high on Shaedon Sharp, too. I think he's intriguing. I'll have a draft profile, actually, later tonight on him. I'm going to record that right after this stream is done. But, like, I'm cool with... If we took Ben Carroll first, I would kind of question it because we need defense. But if we take Jabari first, I'm not going to sit there and hate against Jabari. And I'm not going to sit there and, like, compare Jabari and Chet. You know what I mean? Because if we take Chet, I don't want people, every time Jabari has a good game and Chet maybe struggles a little bit, which rookies are going to struggle, especially when they're 20 years old, I don't want to hear people comparing them the other way. So I'm not going to sit there and root against anyone or, point. I'm not going to sit there and... I'm going to try not to sit there and compare them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
shout out to Brian Tadovich for a $5 donation. If we have the fourth pick and can't trade down, would it be more valuable to draft Ivy and use him as a viable trade asset? I don't know if I trust Sharp.
Well, you would be able to use the fourth pick as a trade asset, because that's the thing. If we end up at 4 on May 17th, we have more than a month to figure out a trade with that pick, because the draft is June 23rd. Mm-hmm. So we have a month and 6 days to figure out some sort of trade. So I don't see it being a situation where we draft Ivy and then try and flip him, because that's the thing, is people probably know that that's going to be the guy who's there at 4, so you can trade the 4th overall pick as if it's Jaden Ivey for a whole month before that. So I would expect us to figure out what we want to do before the draft. But appreciate the dono, Brian. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other draft lottery talk you want to do with Sim?
Carson said to check DMs, but I have no DMs from him, so I don't know what he...
He just wanted you to say his name on stream.
All right.
Good
Cool.
job, Carson. Anything else draft lottery-wise or draft that you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, so they announced the participants at the Combine, and I'm stoked because almost every single person that matters is going, and that's awesome. Now, a majority of them I don't expect to participate in like scrimmages and stuff, but usually when you go, you at least get measured or like do interviews with teams and stuff, or do a private workout or something when you're there. So I'm excited that all of these guys, including most of the international prospects too, are all going to be there. And I actually would be impressed if some of these guys that are kind of let's just take like Keegan Murray, Johnny Davis, Jalen Duren, those kind of guys that are in that range right after the top 3. If those guys like participate in some of the scrimmages or stuff, I would really like that competitiveness from them, because in years past, and I know I've kind of maybe even unfairly labeled Sharp this way just because we don't know why he sat out. But in the past, it almost seems like people want to shy away from that or hide from it. And if the fact that all these people are going leads me to believe that maybe some of these measurements we're hearing about, some of this athleticism we hear about with certain people is accurate, because they're going to show up and prove that there. And that's awesome, because we get better metrics to judge these guys by. And I'm really looking forward to that. I hope they all show up and at least get measured and do some of the little agility drills and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is guys that don't scrimmage, it's usually a business decision. Like, you're risking yourself getting hurt, and if you don't have much draft stock to gain, then it doesn't make sense to play.
That's the beauty of this draft, though, because there's not a clear-cut number one. So all three of those guys who are in the running for it still have to prove something to be that first pick. Like, they're not. Yeah. They could fall. So that's really awesome, I think.
See,
that's one of the better things about having a draft where there's not a clear-cut number one. Because, like, if it was LeBron James or whatever, he wouldn't show up to the combine. Like, you know he's going number one, and you wouldn't really get anything on him, you know?
Yep. Agreed. Anyway. Yeah, I wouldn't expect the top... I think, like, once you get past 20, like, the top 20, those are guys that I would expect to be in the combine. Like, 20 to 30, it's kind of hit or miss, probably. And then second-round picks usually play in scrimmages. But, like, that's the thing, is if you're drafting at the top of the draft, it's like you're doing so much homework because you're at the top of the draft. It's more important than picking in the 40s. And when you're in the 40s, there's a bunch of, like, equal caliber players that, don't really have any separation, where you have more separation between guys at the top of the draft. So that's always been kind of the reason. Because I know a couple people have brought that up, like, why don't certain guys play in the draft combine scrimmages? But the measurements is what I'm looking forward to. And I will have a draft combine, like, certain measurements that I'm looking for in the draft combine, and certain guys that I want to see scrimmage. That video will come out on Saturday, May 14th. I've actually already edited it. I made it like 2 weeks ago. So that'll come out on Saturday just to preview the draft combine. And then I'll do a video talking about the measurements, and we'll talk about the measurements on stream and say whose stock rose and stock fall. And we have you covered on everything draft-wise, even the little nuanced stuff. We're nerds like that.
Yeah.
But anyway. You know who I want to see? You know who I want to see, though? Yeah. I want to see Leonard Miller play in scrimmages. I hope he plays in scrimmages. That's the guy I want to watch.
I mean, honestly, even a guy like Jovic, who, like, there were times where he was rumored to be, you know, a lottery pick, right? And then it seems like this season his stock has fallen more to the late teens, like early 20s, right? Like, that might be a case where he could just go, and if he feels confident enough in his abilities, like play in the scrimmages and dominate and move back up into the lottery possibly, that could be a huge step for him moving up. Like I said, I'm glad he's showing up, because that's one of the guys who I want to see measurements on, because if he's a legit 6'10", that's going to raise his value back into that range as well. So I'm excited that he's going, because to me that probably indicates that he's closer to 6'10" than it seems like he is, and I don't think he would risk measuring himself there if he wasn't, you know?
Yeah.
But Leonard Miller is definitely intriguing. That he's going to shoot up boards probably if he has any good workouts.
Yeah, this is what I was going to ask you. What do you think is the ceiling on his draft potential, his draft stock?
I don't know if this sounds crazy or not, but I think he could sneak into the late lottery.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, so I don't
think you're crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, Josh Primo did last year, and that was crazy.
Right.
Like, in the draft where you have some safer picks, I feel like, in the middle of the first round, a guy with that intrigue and that potential and those measurements and, you know, can handle the ball on the perimeter, his shot looked good in workouts. Obviously, it's just workouts. His shot's kind of weird, but it does look better than it used to. I don't know if you saw his shot, in the past, Eric.
Yeah.
It looked a little bit better. It's still weird, but I mean, if it goes in, it goes in. And if you're at 6'10", you're probably not going to struggle getting it off. I think he could rise to 10 or 11.
Mm-hmm. I mean, especially if he, once again, if he measures well. Like, yeah, Because if he's got a 7'2" wingspan with that athleticism, and he's a legit like 6'7", 6'8" ish, and he's got handles. Yeah, his shooting might not even matter that much. He could rise up just because of the other possibilities.
It just sucks because I just wish we had a pick in the teens for like an Ousmane Dieng or Leonard Miller, because those are the type of guys that the Blazers, I feel like, need to draft and just hope they pop, and then if they pop, that raises your ceiling compared to just like a safer role player, Right. So that's the thing, is like, he came out of nowhere. I hadn't heard of him until like 2 weeks ago, and I've watched some of his footage and whatnot. It's just fascinating. Like, when was the first time you heard his name?
Right around the time of the Hoop Summit, I think, or like somewhere around there. Yeah.
So, like, we know we're hoop nerds. Well, we didn't hear about him until recently.
This is why. I mean, I've looked ahead. I actually looked ahead the other day to the 2023 draft just to kind of look at it. But other than, like, just looking at potential, like, way too early mock drafts for 2023, like, I don't really look ahead that far. And I mean, it wasn't until a couple weeks ago that he became draft eligible, so I wasn't even thinking he would be a part of this draft process. And so, so when I don't know, somehow he got, and he's only 18 too, which is the other intriguing part. So, so when they announced he was, I've been trying to soak up as much information on him as I can. But yeah, he wasn't on my radar because he wasn't even like considered on anyone's radar at the time, because no one knew he was going to be draft eligible this year.
Yeah, he'll barely be 18 and a half when he's drafted. I don't think he falls past 20. That's my gut feeling right now. Mods, clip it, put it in the Discord. I don't think he falls past 20. That probably won't be a hot take in a couple weeks, but I still see him on most mocks and most boards below 20. I just think a team, and there's no way that no teams in the teens fall in love with this guy.
Yeah.
Just as the idea of him is going to intrigue a team enough to take him in the teens. Yeah. And it's not going to be a guy that's probably ready to play right away. It's probably going to take 3 years to develop him, but he's going to be 18 and a half on draft night. Barely 18 and a half. So you have a ton of time to mold this guy, and there's going to be a team that thinks our coaching staff is going to be able to develop him into a really good player. And that's the thing is, Toronto took Bruno Caboclo at 20 when he was like a fringe draftable guy going into that draft. Caboclo.
No, but then they did it with Siakam.
Oh, yeah, and then they did it with Siakam at 27 when he was a late second round pick, and look at what he's become. So, this would be such a Toronto pick because he's Canadian too. This would be such a Toronto pick in the middle of the first round. They just don't have their pick. Yeah. But there's going to be a team that is intrigued enough.
Does Charlotte still have JT Thor? They drafted him, right?
Yeah.
So they have 2 picks in the middle of the first round, right? Mm-hmm. All right. If they don't trade those to move up, JT Thor, Kai Jones, Leonard Miller as kind of their super athletic running front court of the future, that would be a move I would look to make if I was Charlotte. And then you could get, a center with your other pick or whatever. But yeah, that's something I would look to do, because that seems really intriguing to me.
I mean, every team in the teens could use a guy like him. Mm-hmm. You got Houston, you got Atlanta, you got Cleveland, even OKC at 12. I think that might be his ceiling, is OKC at 12, because that's their second first round pick, and they have a bunch of picks. It's like they have a ton of first round picks. So the strategy for OKC might just be to gamble on the highest upside at every single pick, just assuming that like 2 or 3 of them are going to pan out and become potential stars.
Yeah, Charlie, I wasn't mentioning. Obviously they have good starters at the forward position. I'm just saying, like, as a developmental team, and I think those 3 would work really well with LaMelo as well on a fast-breaking team. But, we talked about this with Sharp. I mean, we were 2 of the first people who said that the intrigue of him and just the mystery and the kind of no one knows. Like, is he going to be like a superstar, or is he going to be a bust, And those kind of, for certain GMs, Sam Presti, like you mentioned with OKC, they're all about going for that because
Yeah.
if when you have a ton of picks like OKC does, if it doesn't work out, who cares? They're not going to be like a championship contender next year anyway. But if it does, then Presti looks like a genius, right? So
Yeah.
those are exactly the type of players that several teams that aren't necessarily trying to win right away would do. Now, it's a little different for someone like Joe Cronin if somehow we ended up with a mid-teens pick, which I don't think we're going to. But if he takes that risk and it's kind of like we're expected to take a jump back into being good next year and it doesn't work out, then it becomes really tough to justify that kind of pick. But if you're confident enough in your skills and your evaluation process, that's the kind of risk I love to see GMs taking. So I'm not surprised. I would not be surprised if he got close to the top 10, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. I think 20, because San Antonio has 3 first-round picks. I think 20 is his floor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going past San Antonio at 20, because this makes a ton of sense for a team like Sacramento or San Antonio that needs some long-term upside, especially at a forward position, because that's kind of where they're a little bit bare.
I mean, they got Vassell and
guy.
they got Keldon Johnson, but yeah, I mean, you
Yeah,
could always do someone better.
I don't see either of those guys having like a star ceiling. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, Keldon Johnson's good, but he didn't take the jump I thought he was going to make this year. But he's more of like a wing to me, shooting guard, small forward type than like a legitimate forward, 6'10", like a big forward like that. They don't have a big forward like that. So that's the thing is I think that makes a ton of sense for San Antonio 20. I think that's honestly his floor. So I want to say that before, I feel like every mock draft is going to end up having him at like 16, 17 in 2 to 3 weeks, and it's not going to be a hot take at all then. Mm-hmm. So I want to be ahead of the curve on this one. So
yeah, and let me just see who it was. David, you asked, are they still doing in-market workouts like coming to Portland? So as far as I know, Portland has not had any workouts yet for specific draft players, but lots of teams have started working out. So yeah, that's a thing. They're still doing those. And I know the Pacers just had their first workouts today, I think. And then several other teams have started over the last week or so. None of the big time players have started working out yet. I think most of those players are waiting to see how the actual order pans out before, like, if we end up with the 7th pick, obviously Jabari and Chet and Jaden Ivey and stuff aren't going to come work out for us, so it won't matter for us to work out those guys. But yeah, it should ramp up here right after the lottery on Tuesday.
Yep. So we'll have more content on that, obviously, in the next couple of months, or not couple of months, 1 month until the draft. No, 1.5 months. I don't know. Time's tough. Anyway.
23rd, yeah. A month and 11 days.
Yeah. I'm tripping. Let's talk about the title of this episode. Okay, Joe Cronin was promoted a couple days ago to full-time general manager, and some people had a meltdown. I can't blame him. I mean, his deadline was very questionable, and, there's a lot of people that seemed not necessarily surprised, but like it was almost like they didn't necessarily expect this, and I was baffled by that.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
here's the thing. Like, and Jason Quick had an article saying that the Blazers didn't do a search. Okay, they didn't conduct a search looking at different general managers, having them pitch their ideas, and then running Joe Cronin through that process and comparing them and making sure that Cronin was the right guy. But like, the time to do a search was before the trade deadline. And they didn't do a search. Mm-hmm. So, I agree with the notion that they absolutely should have done a search, and I just don't understand what Jody's plan is. It just seems like her plan is to sell, and it seems like at this point she needs to sell. We can talk about that in a little bit. But, like, all the outrage about them not conducting a search right now should have been the case in January. But in January or in December, it was, oh, yay, we got Olshey gone. and nobody even thought about a search. You know, some people tossed out a couple names here and there, but there was not much talk about a search. But here's the reason why this time for the search was back then. You don't let an interim GM do everything that Cronin did at the trade deadline without planning to keep them on. It's
right.
like that's the start of a plan. And even if it's a terrible start, it's the start of a multi-step process. And you don't let somebody that you don't plan on at least trying to see out that process make the first steps of that process. So when he started doing that at the trade deadline, for me, it was like, yep, this guy's going to be here. And when I saw the news, I literally had no reaction. I saw the news, I was like, oh, okay. Literally went and did something else. Like, I had absolutely no reaction. And then I went back and I looked on Twitter and I looked at our Twitter group chat and everything and saw people like, no, oh my goodness. It's like, it was obvious at trade deadline day. So, yeah, they should have conducted a search, but it shouldn't necessarily have been now. It should have been a while ago.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just say what it is. He's a yes man, and they hired him because he's a yes man. He did the job they wanted him to do.
Yep.
This is the problem I have with not doing a search right now, though. Even if it's just a search knowing that Cronin, like, everyone says this about our coaching search, right? That it wasn't really a real search because we knew all along we were going to get Billups, even though that's not necessarily true, right? Yeah. But he was the front runner from the beginning, so then people just assume we were never going to do anything else. And we just interviewed Becky for the press of interviewing her or whatever, and, you know, all that crap. But this is a chance for any front office person above Joe or above Cronin. So that would basically just be Jody and Burt Cold, I guess, because they're too cheap to hire like an actual president right now. So like this is a situation, and Quick touched upon this in his article, where you can get some feedback to make sure that what Cronin is doing is the best course of action for your franchise. So if Cronin's sitting there telling them, look at all this flexibility we have, right? And some other GM comes in and is like, you know what? Like, you really don't have that much flexibility once you resign all these guys. And like Cronin hadn't told Jody that or something. Like, I don't know what they've been discussing or whatever, but like someone could have been like, you know, this plan is dumb. Like, I would have approached it this way or whatever. And then they could still hire Cronin, but they can be like, dude, like, why aren't you questioning whether this is the right move or not? And just get a little bit more insight as to what they're doing. But none of these people have a clue. And that includes Cronin. Like, none of these guys know what they're doing. And Jody doesn't know what she's doing. She just leaves it up to the people who like are in charge. Burt Cold finally gets to act like he's the owner and be the Paul Allen meddling person, you know.
Yeah.
And now we have a GM that'll just be like, yes, I'll do whatever you want me to do, like, you know, and then he'll take the fall for it or whatever. But yeah, I wasn't surprised at all that he was named the GM. I was surprised that it was for 4 years though.
Yeah, he hasn't earned 4 years.
Right.
Give him a year, and then if he's doing a good job, bring him back. But that's the thing, I knew this, like, the ownership, they would like to win, but I don't think they really want to win like Paul Allen wanted to win. Here's the thing, is like, that might sound bad to some people. This team could still hypothetically put together a championship roster. Because, I mean, you look at Dallas. Dallas has pushed Phoenix to a Game 7. Memphis blew out Golden State without Ja Morant by like 50. Okay? I think it's as wide open as it's ever been in the Western Conference. Okay? Like, I think hypothetically, if we have an okay offseason, we could compete with a team like Dallas. And Dallas has pushed Phoenix to a Game 7. So, like, I'm not... The ownership doesn't have to, like, really want to win in order for us to win. Like, they don't have to want to win as bad as we do. It'd be nice, of course. It's nice having an owner like a Paul Allen who really wants to win. where you don't even have to question it. But winning is not the number one priority for the ownership group, and I think that's pretty obvious right now because they signed Joe Cronin to a 4-year deal, and I think that's because he, cleaned up the front office culture, hired people, there's more that goes into GMing than just building a winning roster, okay? So part of the reason they gave him a 4-year deal was for those reasons, and then, if he's a guy that's going to do what they want him to do, in terms of trying to keep them out of the tax if they want to stay out of the tax or whatever, then, okay, yeah, we'll give you a 4-year contract and, he'll be a yes man and listen to them if they want to stay out of the tax and whatnot, and then if that gets done, then they'll give him the reins to try and build a winning roster, just within their constraints, their confines. So that's not that's not the most ideal thing. It's not a death sentence or anything. I still want ownership that really wants to win. I want another, a guy like a Paul Allen who was really competitive and wanted this organization to be the best possible organization on the court. But I think we should have known for a while now that that's not this ownership group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. See, I go back to this on that subject. So obviously the first year Paul died right before the season. It's impossible to know what Jody would have done given the full off season or whatnot. But we go into the Western Conference Finals that year, and Jody seemed pretty happy and into it and stuff like that. The next year, obviously Nurk was hurt. We totally bombed. We're below 500 most of the season. And then, COVID happens and, we make a run in the bubble and make the playoffs. But that team wasn't going anywhere. So I understood at the time, why she didn't want to go all in with that team being in 9th or 10th place or whatever we were going into the trade deadline. And then the next season, we kind of regroup, and we have Nurk back, and we re-sign Melo, and we bring Cantor back, and they're feeling more like it's going to be like the 2019 season versus the season after. And then we get off to a bad start again, and we're below 500 for a while. Now we made a trade and got Norm and stuff, and we ended up going on a little run and making the playoffs, getting the 6th seed. But at the trade deadline, it still wasn't a case where you could say, look, if we just make this move, we're right there. We could be a contender. So we were basically underachievers the 2 years she's had. And then we go into this year thinking we're going to be back up to being possibly on the fringe of contending. And we completely complete egg. Dame's hurt. We tanked the season and all that. So I don't know for sure. I can't say if we were the 2nd or 3rd seed like Memphis was this year at the trade deadline, and Cronin or whether it was Olshey in the last couple of years goes to Jody and says, "Hey, look, we're right there this year. Let's make this move. It's going to put us way into the tax." I don't know what she would say to that, because we haven't been in that situation since she's been the owner.
Yeah.
But from a business perspective, I understand why she wanted to get below the tax the last 2 years. And I understand her not wanting to be. And on top of that, even though we've ducked the tax, we're still one of the highest payrolls in the league over the last 3 years. So it's not like we're totally cheap asses and stuff.
She's going to run this like a business, and she wants, she would like to win, but she isn't going to just put that over running it like a business.
Yeah. But so I want to see what happens. Let's say we're not in the tax going into next year, right? And then we're the 4th or 5th seed at the deadline, and we have the possibility to add a prime piece that would help us possibly get up further in the standings and compete. Does she agree to that? Does she allow that? And so until we're in that position, it's hard for me to just say she doesn't want want to do what's necessary to win.
See, I don't think we'll have the assets to find that out.
Right.
you know, so
that's true, yeah.
you know, that's a whole other issue.
Yep.
But shout out to Chris Brandlin, $10 dono says, remember when Olshey got fired, all those top GM candidates were saying that they would trade Dame. No one wanted into the situation where they would have no control. That's why we got the errand boy. I don't know what... We never even had a GM candidate to begin with.
Yeah, there were no candidates.
So I don't know what GM candidates said they would just trade Dame. Mm-hmm. But thank you for the $10 dono, Chris. I'm just kind of confused by the message.
So the original message came from like Woj and Bobby Marks and stuff, who got their information from Olshey.
Yeah.
That, because I mean, Olshey, despite the day Olshey got fired, Dame went on record of saying like he didn't think Olshey was a bad guy and he respected what he did here and he thought he did the best he could, and he was in those. He said he was in all the free agent meetings and all that stuff, and he knows that Olshey tried to do a bunch of things that just didn't work out, and it wasn't necessarily his fault. So he took the higher road and like praised Olshey for his time here or whatever. And then Olshey just completely threw him under the bus for no reason. Yep. I have no idea why. And so that whole narrative comes from, and now Jason Quick had that narrative too. And it's BS. It's people just
you got to see through the noise, because Olshey still talks to people that are in the media.
Mm-hmm. And then I know Chris, it was the day after he got fired. So but anyways, so even in the Quick article, it says like they needed to interview other candidates so they could see what the pitfalls of signing Damian Lillard to an extension would be and all that. It's like, why are people constantly looking at it as a negative instead of, we've wanted this guy to stay for years, he wants to stay, reward him. It's that simple in my mind. Like, just reward him for being loyal and wanting to win here. I don't care how much money it is. It's 2 years down the line. If we don't make the necessary moves before that extension kicks in, it literally does not matter. He could make 100% of the salary cap. If we're not set up in 2 years when that extension hits to go on a run with him, it does not matter how much he makes. We're going to have Ant making more money. If Nas jumps, if we draft well, we'll have all the players here. That's why this particular trade deadline was so important, and why I get so mad at the people who think we just needed to cut bait with these guys and it would be fine. I was on here. You guys know I was all aboard the plan of building around Dame and Ant and trading everyone else, trade CJ, trade Norm, trade Rocco, get those guys out of here. But you cannot execute that plan without getting the assets to execute it. And that's where they messed up. They just tore it down without thinking about how they can build it back up correctly. And they can spit flexibility all you want, but the flexibility does not matter. Like, we'll talk about this later, but Zach LaVine, who you got a video about, right? Yep. Like, we're not getting him with the flexibility we have. And if we do get him, we're going to have to give up half our team between waiving people and trading people and stuff like that.
We're going to have to give up more than we got back for CJ McCollum. So how the hell does that make any sense?
Right. So we're not set up to add another star next to Dame unless we get lucky with the draft pick and all this stuff, which we had that draft pick anyway. It was our pick if we didn't make the playoffs. So, like, it's not like we wouldn't have had that same opportunity had we gotten better assets from New Orleans. And this is where, because I was torn on this, because we went on here and said, it might not have been Cronin's decision to make these trades, right?
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, at least the first one, for sure. So he didn't have a choice in that, according to what I was told or whatever. But if they're saying do this trade, if you're a good GM, you would still say, hey, this isn't enough value. Like, we need to get at least another draft pick from them or something. Like, I don't want Keon Johnson. I don't think he fits in what we're trying to do because he's a guard. And we have all these guards already. We're trying to get rid of guards to clear up space. Why does it make sense to value him as a first-round pick or whatever? So maybe, like, even if it's as simple as a lottery protected first in 2028 that turns into nothing if it doesn't convey or something. Just like some little chance of extra value, right?
Yep.
And then, but okay, fine. You erase that, right? You say Cronin had no choice in the Clippers deal. He was told he had to make it. Fine. We're under the tax at that point. So we go to the CJ trade, right? And he's told, I want you to take care of CJ, find out what team he wants to be traded to, and get him there. Well, great. He wants to go to New Orleans, and New Orleans is dying for a player like CJ to come to them. So much so that they're willing to give up a lottery pick for him if they suck after they trade him, right?
Yeah.
And so Cronin, from that point on, even if he was forced to trade CJ specifically to New Orleans, has the leverage that New Orleans wants him, New Orleans trying to make the play-in and possibly the playoffs, and they have never had a player of CJ's caliber that wants to actually go to New Orleans and choose them over his hometown of Cleveland or New York or LA or whatever. Like CJ, that was his number one destination, was New Orleans. Name another player in the history of New Orleans franchise that wasn't drafted there or traded there that actually wanted to choose them and go there in free agency. The best player is who? Devontae Graham last year in free agency. He sucks, right? So, like, Cronin had all the leverage there, and he messed up the protections to where if the trade worked out perfectly the way New Orleans wanted to it, we get screwed. And that, to me, that misstep proved that he was not capable of handling this GM and this rebuild to me. And that's where the disconnect to me comes from him just doing what the ownership was told and to him not being a good GM and not worthy of being our GM long-term, is because the negotiations of the protection against a GM who sucks at trading too, and David Griffin, and he had a chance to set us up perfectly, and he missed. He made a major misstep, right? So that's where I got mad at Cronin. From all accounts, it doesn't seem like he wanted to, or he just assumed that the Pelicans were not going to make the playoffs. Like they were acting like they were going to have 2 lottery picks unless they got unlucky and it moved up to top 4, right? Which case we could have handled that a lot easier, right? Because that would have been out of our control. But to not have the creativity or the wherewithal to either combine the 2 trades, knowing that you were going to trade CJ for weeks. According to CJ, he knew 2 weeks before he was traded that he chose New Orleans and that they were trying to move him there. To not have the creativity to mix those 2 trades together to get a bigger trade exception, or to not have the accountability to go over all possible scenarios in a trade and be like, hey, wait a minute. If you guys make the playoffs and the Lakers don't, we're getting screwed here. We can't make this trade like that. Come on, you got to at least make it flip to the Lakers pick. So, and I don't care if they would have said, if they were saying this is our final offer, you call their bluff. And Cronin got outdone in negotiations, and because of that, I mean, I guess he could improve, right? Like a coach improves or whatever. Like Chauncey could hopefully improve from his slow start from this year. But can a GM improve that much to like off of that big of a mistake? And now I'm worried about any other negotiations he makes from here on out. So I think that we're going to look back and say, like, this is where it all went wrong, was giving this guy control to make this plan work.
Back to Chris Brandlin's message, because I want to respond to that. Like, there's 30 GM jobs. A lot of GMs will put up with there's a lot of situations where you'll have meddling ownership, and GM candidates, especially if they've never been one before. You know, a Tayshaun Prince would put up with that, especially if it gets to work with Chauncey Billups, who we won a championship with. Okay. A lot of GMs would die to have a superstar. Most GMs, if they're new, they're inheriting a situation where they need to try and figure out how to get a superstar. Okay? A GM that comes into Portland, They already have a superstar who wants to be here. Do not undersell that. So to say that no GM candidates would want to come here, and if they did, they would say they want to trade Dame, I think is actually completely backwards. So I understand that if you don't have control and you have to get them to deduct the tax, like, yeah, maybe that's an obstacle, but you're going to have obstacles all the time as GMs, and you're going to have to work for an owner. That's what being a GM is. So we had assets to get value for, and it wasn't hard to duck the luxury tax. So if
we already did.
If you're a GM candidate and you're interviewing and ownership is saying, okay, we want to retool this roster to make it better around Dame. We're willing to give you leash for a 2-year plan. We just have to duck the tax this year. You have to get us under the luxury tax no matter what. But beyond that, we would like to retool the team around Dame, make it more financially, suitable for where we're kind of at now in terms of the payroll. But you'll be able to, trade off some pieces and get some assets and then try and build this organization back up. And you have a loyal superstar that's down for that. That is a great situation to go to. That is a phenomenal situation to go to. Actually, I don't understand why people thought that it was that bad of a situation to go to. Mm-hmm. Like, because we have our mock off-season selection show. If you guys don't know, we do a mock off-season every summer where me, Eric, and 28 others, we each run a team, follow CBA rules, and make trades, run through the draft based, if we trade picks, that gets factored into the draft, and we run through free agency. And we get to pick our teams. We get 3 random choices, okay? That would be the type of situation I'd want to run in the mock off-season. Because you have a ton of power in terms of you're selling assets and you're able to choose what you get back, and then you have the freedom to flip those for what you think can help your loyal superstar. Mm-hmm. So them wanting to duck the tax, a ton of owners want to duck the luxury tax every year. So I don't understand why people think that nobody would have taken this job, because I absolutely do not agree with that.
Yep. And Greg Mock says he assumed Paul George would play against the Pelicans. So did I. That's the problem. That's my whole point. Why would you assume any of that? Like, first of all, the Clippers were up with, a minute or 2 minutes left against the Timberwolves. They might not even – if Paul George gets COVID after they win that game, then it doesn't even matter because they're playing the Timberwolves, not the Clippers, right? And, who knows? I mean, there's just so many variables, but that's why – you're not a good GM if you don't account for that. And if he assumed that the Clippers were just going to beat the Pelicans and Paul George would be out, Paul George wasn't even supposed to be back this season at the trade deadline. He was saying he possibly was going to miss the rest of the season at that time. So to assume that Paul George would play, or to blame Paul George getting COVID as the reason we didn't get that pick and Cronin got screwed, is complete negligence by the front office. You do not assume anything. You cover as many bases as possible. Now, it could have been still unlucky. We could have still gotten the Lakers pick, and it could have moved up into the top 4, and we still wouldn't have got it, right? But at least you would have had another layer of things that would have had to go wrong, and the likelihood of all of those things happening were slim enough to where you could have justified it. Okay, you did the best you could to get a pick from 5 to whatever it would have ended up, 5 to 14 or 5 to 10 in the Lakers case, and it just didn't work out. Then you accept whatever happens after that. But to not account for that one possibility, which if the Lakers didn't make the playoffs, it was most likely because the Pelicans did, and to not think about that scenario, or to just assume it wouldn't happen, or the Lakers would get it together. Don't worry, it's the Lakers. They have AD coming back. They have LeBron. They're not going to miss the playoffs, right? Like, they did. It happened. You have to account for that. I'm sorry. If you don't, you're not good at your job.
Yeah, I mean, to put it as simply as possible, okay, nothing else matters. If you have the chance to mitigate your risk without any extra expense to you, and you don't do it, that's bad. Mm-hmm. You're doing a bad job. Like, why would you not willingly lower your risk for no extra expense? And that's what I don't understand. Like, logically, it doesn't make sense how he couldn't have mitigated his risk more, considering the New Orleans Pelicans, after trading for CJ, if they missed the playoffs, they would have owed us a lottery pick. So why not back it up with the Lakers lottery pick if we get it? Even if it's unlikely, I don't care if there's a 1, 2, 5% chance at the time. We brought it up at the time. I don't care how unlikely it is. If you can mitigate your risk without giving up anything else, you do it. You don't just say, oh, well, it's unlikely, so sure, I'll take on the extra risk. And then look, it played out. So no excuse about Paul George missing blah, 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 blah. That does not excuse him. Because logically, it made no sense how he couldn't have mitigated his risk more if he was a good negotiator. So, I mean, there's no doubts about it. He's a questionable negotiator because I don't even know if it's... See, that's the thing. I have to sit here and wonder, is he that bad of a negotiator that he couldn't mitigate his risk, or is he that negligent that he didn't try to mitigate his risk?
That was my next point, and this is why, once again, I don't like Cronin as GM. Because one of two things happened. Either he was that bad at negotiating to where he couldn't talk them into giving them the Lakers pick too as a backup protection, knowing that if that happened, it meant that their pick would have been the playoffs, right? Or it moved up into the top 4. So you have the leverage to say, look, if your pick doesn't convey, you're willing to give us a lottery pick, but it only conveys to us if you suck, but don't suck enough to go into the bottom 4 or whatever, but also you suck enough not to get into the playoffs. And then, so in that situation, you're willing to give us your first round pick for CJ, but if you fall into the bottom 4 and get a top 4 pick, or you get into the playoffs, then you're not willing to give us a pick for CJ? Like, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah. And if Cronin can't negotiate that, he's not a good negotiator, right? And it could have been an inexperience. It could have just been a complete brain fart at the time. I don't know what was going on. But in this particular instance, with the type of draft capital the Pelicans have and still have, right? They still have a massive stockpile of draft picks in the future, and we couldn't get any of that as backup better than the Milwaukee 2025 like pick. Like, we can't even get like the Pelicans pick lottery protected next year or so. I don't know. Yeah. But like, so to not do that is one thing. Like, that's one angle, right? The other.
I mean, yeah. It's just like I just want to phrase this about a way. Like, yeah, if you miss the playoffs, you're willing to give up the 8th pick. So if you make the playoffs, you're not willing to give up the 8th pick. Yeah. Like, it's just, that's the easiest way to put it. Like, what?
If you made the playoffs, it's because sense. CJ was probably helping you get there, right?
Yeah, it's just like.
And that's the other thing. Ahead. So that leads me to another point. So it was either that, or he is the first GM in the history of sports to negotiate a trade where the value for our team gets worse if the more it works out for the other team, right? Because in every other trade, if like in the NFL, we talked about this before, if a quarterback wins a certain amount of games, or I think Carson Wentz had this where it was like, it's a 3rd round pick unless he has this many yards or starts or something, and then it moves into a 2nd round pick, right? But it's not like, oh, if Carson Wentz leads us to the playoffs, you get a 7th round pick instead of a 3rd round pick, right? That doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense.
I mean, it's just like, that's the thing is, like, some people say, oh, it's armchair GMing. You don't know this, you don't know that, blah, blah, blah. You're not him, you don't know. At some point, there's enough of a level of common sense that anything that doesn't go along with that doesn't make sense. Okay? Like, it makes so, like, as a negotiator, it's such common sense that they'd be willing to give up the 8th pick if they made the playoffs and the trade worked, considering they were willing to give up the 8th pick if they didn't make the playoffs and the trade didn't work as well. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a point where logic is so obvious that it's not armchair GMing. It's just pointing out the obvious logic of it. And if you don't want to see the obvious logic of it, that's completely fine. But nobody has explained how that makes sense. Nobody has explained how that makes sense. It's all, you don't know, see, you're armchair GMing, like, that's the thing. Like, that's explain how it makes sense. Because it doesn't. And there's no way to explain how it makes sense because it's just common sense. It's just logic. So, we can sit here and, like, argue if it's logic or not, I guess, but that's the thing, is anybody that disagrees should just try and explain how it makes sense. And that's the thing. If you come into our chat and disagree, we'll disagree too. Nothing personal, and some people don't like that. So, anyway, see you later, Greg Bach.
Looney says the Pelicans couldn't trade next year's first because you can't trade back-to-back first, but they would have included the 2024. Well, you could have wrote it to where if they got the Lakers pick, then we get their pick next year. But
yep.
Or in the scenario where we assume they didn't make the playoffs and they moved into the top 4, then we get their pick next year because they would have their pick this year. So
yeah, you're able to put conditions on a pick where it could convey at one time or another time based on their earlier picks conveying. Like, it's kind of complicated, but you can work that in to abide by the stipend rule.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Like, it's all complicated stuff. I mean, people don't really go this deep into this sort of stuff, but it's...
DJ Vega says you can't use football because there's multiple rounds and there's no lottery to protect picks. Okay, fine. Let's go. Karis LeVert trade, right?
Yeah.
Indiana got, I think they gave up like a Miami late second round pick, and they got two seconds. One of them ended up being the 31st pick, right? Mm-hmm. But the lottery pick they got, right, was lottery protected, right? So Cavaliers obviously collapse, don't make the playoffs, so they keep their pick this year, right? What does the pick turn into? Same thing next year, right?
Yep.
Same protections, right?
Yep.
So it's not getting worse. It's just probably going to convey next year instead. And if it doesn't end up conveying, it turns into another second or whatever. I'm just using that as an example of every other sport, including basketball. The protection gets less, it's the same, or it turns into something of equivalent value usually, unless it's the case of like an obvious one like OKC trading a top 20 protected pick when you know they're not going to be a playoff team and then you know it's going to convert into seconds. It's not like they're really trading a first. But in this case, they were really, really, really willing to trade a lottery pick for CJ McCollum, and without a lottery pick, so that doesn't make sense.
I mean, we've argued this so much. I didn't even plan on really going deep into this again, because at this point, if people don't agree, they're never going to agree, and that's fine, whatever. Like, I'm still waiting for somebody to explain how it makes sense, but like, we've talked about this a lot. Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know how else to phrase it, Like, I don't know how else to explain it. We've tried to explain it pretty much every way possible at this point. So, it is what it is. If you think that Cronin's a genius, then, you know what? I hope you're freaking right. Like, I hope he's just some master genius that nobody understands how smart he is. Like, I know that sounds like, I'm being sarcastic or a smartass or something, but I legitimately would love that, because then we're winning a freaking chip, baby. So hopefully Cronin's a genius, and hopefully Jody Allen's a genius and knows what she's doing too.
Well, I have a question though. If we're just gonna put, a yes man in charge, why wouldn't we then hire like someone that's diverse? Like, you know what I mean? Like, give someone a chance. I know Cronin's been waiting for a chance, but, hire someone that, I don't know.
I mean, like with sports, it's like, you don't want to hire somebody because they're diverse. You want to hire somebody because they deserve the job. We didn't
hire the best person because we didn't even interview, so how do we know? I'm just saying, in that scenario where you're not going to interview anyone, why not just promote someone as the token person or whatever like that? I don't know. It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Anyway, Brian, you had donated a while ago. Thank you for the $10 dono, Brian Tadovich. He says Dame has said he's being more involved in the front office, knowing that how are those trades making any sense? Dame didn't say, I want Bledsoe and Keon. Is there a bigger picture here? Thank you, Brian, for the $10 dono, and that's a good question. Honestly, I don't expect Dame to fully know the CBA. I think he probably knows it better now than he did at the trade deadline, and Cronin kind of talked about that, but I'm sure it was a situation where Cronin's like, yeah, CJ wants to go there, and Dame's boys with CJ. So if CJ wants to go there, like and they get back a guy like a Josh Hart, and we have a chance of getting a top 10 or 11 pick that we could trade for your friend Jeremy Grant. Then Dame's probably like, oh, that sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so much nuance that goes into...
saying, hey, Cronin, how are we supposed to get Jeremy Grant now, dumbass?
yeah. I mean, like, that's the thing is... I mean, does Dame know that the Pelicans got the Lakers pick and that should have logically been included as a backup protection? Like, you know what I mean? There's so many nuances that go into it that I feel like most athletes don't know all the nuances.
I'm just proud of
because there's no reason for them to.
For correcting himself, and now whenever someone mentions the cap space, he's like, no, we have trade exceptions to draft picks and stuff. Like,
has he done that?
Yeah, he did that. Right, it was in that Draymond Green interview, where Draymond said, you guys have like 60 million in cap space or whatever, and Dame said something like, well, we have like a 20 million trade exception and stuff like that. So someone got to Dame and he figured it out. But yeah,
I mean, the CBA is not easy to learn.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's possible. Like, I think anybody in this chat could know the CBA if they took the time out, but you legitimately got to take some time out.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, there's a lot of people that just don't know basic things, and I think everybody should know if you're a diehard fan of the team. I mean, if you're in here watching a YouTube stream talking about the Portland Trail Blazers, then you're already, probably somewhat of a diehard, because I feel like casual Blazer fans aren't doing that, especially on May 12th, 2022 at 10:57 p.m. Pacific time. So, you're already a step up, right? And I feel like everybody should know basic things such as you can't use cap space and traded player exceptions. With bird rights for Nurkic and Anthony Simons, they come with a cap hold that goes against the cap. And if you get rid of that cap hold that goes against the cap, then you can't go over the salary cap to re-sign him. So, and then, you do thinking based off of that. So it's like, okay, in order to sign Zach LaVine as a free agent, we'd have to renounce Nurkic's cap hold. But, we have cap space. But here's the thing. If you use that cap space on Zach LaVine that you created by renouncing Nurkic's cap hold, all of a sudden you don't have cap space for Nurkic. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and since you renounce his cap hold, you can't go over the salary cap to re-sign him. So how are you going to bring him back? You can't. Unless you still have enough cap space to sign him. Then it's like he's like any other free agent.
Well, it's worse than that, because to do that, so we cleared just enough room to sign LaVine, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'd lose the trade exceptions. We'd lose Nurk. We'd have to lose one of Ant and Hart too, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Maybe we do a sign and trade or something. I don't know. But so on top of all that, right? So we lose Nurk. We get a guard, right? Zach LaVine, shooting guard. So we'd have the $5 million room exception and minimum contracts. And who's our starting forward story in that scenario?
Yeah.
Who's our starting center in that scenario?
Exactly. Our draft pick, and then maybe we trade for Grant. Like, but
how are we
I'm
trading
stupid.
For Grant?
Exactly. Because if we trade for Grant, he goes against the salary cap, so how are we getting LaVine?
Yeah, exactly.
And if we get a top 3 pick, that rookie's going to make more.
Yeah.
So, once you draft him, isn't there a charge?
Right.
Like,
let's just say, let's play this out, okay? So,
yeah.
Let's just say we sign and trade Ant or something for him. We kept Hart, and then we got rid of Nurk, Ingles, everyone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have our guards are Dame, LaVine, and Hart. And then we have Nas, the draft pick, and Watford, and Greg Brown as our forwards.
Yeah, well,
and no center.
If we sign and trade Ant for Zach LaVine, it's not using cap space to get him, so we could still keep our TPs and whatnot. But
depending on how much Ant make, we'd have to include other salary there.
Yeah. So that's the potential workaround. But I don't want to trade Ant for Zach LaVine. I mean, and then you're probably gonna have to give up more. And I don't think LaVine wants to come here. So there's so many steps where it's that's not gonna happen. But that's the workaround where if there's a free agent that made sense, as a sign-and-trade target. Like, I don't think Miles Bridges is a target. I think Charlotte's just going to keep him. Like, DeAndre Ayton's a center. We don't need to be using assets to sign and trade for a center, and I think Phoenix is going to keep him. So there's not a target like that, but if there was, it would be feasible to maybe... The problem is we don't have tradable salary. Like, you're having to trade Bledsoe and Hart, and that's $31 million of salary. And, like, what other salary do they have on the books right now that's not a free agent? So that's the thing, is you can sign and trade, you know, if Chicago wants Ant and Levine wants to come to Portland, you could hypothetically sign and trade Ant and, like, toss in Winslow and match Zach LaVine, but you do get hard capped at a level like $6 million above the tax where your salary cannot go over that for an entire year. So it's like, then if you're using a TP on Jeremy Grant and just purely adding like $20 million of salary, all of a sudden you're probably right up against that hard cap. So that's the issue with like the Zach LaVine thing. It doesn't solve either of the forward positions, and feasibly, it just doesn't make sense for some nuanced reasons that are hard to explain. And that we'll try and explain because, you know, we know people... A lot of you probably want to understand what's possible going into the offseason, so you know what to expect. So we'll be the platform to try and explain that sort of stuff. You know, there's other platforms that will say, oh, that's a good move, or go after DeAndre Ayton, or whatever, but...
So Fuzzy says it was a Clutch sports play, not a serious rumor. Locked On said it looks like Joe is playing an info game, keeping Clutch happy, blah, blah, blah. Bro, we've been telling you guys this for months, years, from the beginning of time. Like, why are you saying other people said this? Like, we told you guys. I mean, if you follow me on Twitter or whatever, I told everyone right when it happened, like a minute after that tweet. I said this is a leverage play or whatever. Like this, like that's obvious. It's not anyone's like. No one has inside information here. This is the problem. Portland.
I mean, maybe he's just saying you're right. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I had someone else tell me that, like, oh, did you hear the theory that some other YouTuber show that's comparable to ours in like copying us only. But
good for Mike Richmond for figuring that out, though.
No, not Mike Richmond. It was someone else.
Yeah, I mean, just on Fuzzy's comment. Good for Mike Richmond for being able to see that.
I'm talking about another somebody, two people. But they're saying like, oh, we have this theory that, or we have inside information that this is a favor to an agent, blah, 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 right? It's like, this is, and DJ Vega is just said exactly what I was about to say. This all ties back to the Adrian Wojnarowski tweet that we have $60 million in cap space, possibly, right? So from that moment on, it doesn't matter if we have $60 million. Look how many people who should know better thought we had $60 million in cap. Look how many people still to this day on Twitter or social media still think we have $60 million in cap, right?
Yep.
So this is the thing. Every agent's going to be like, ooh, Portland traded away all their good players, but they're keeping Dame. They've promised him they're going to win next season. That is the ultimate position. They have $60 million in cap space perceivingly. I know that's probably not a word, but like from their point of view, oh, it doesn't even matter if they have cap space because we can leverage this as everyone thinks they have cap space, so we can just say Zach LaVine's interested in Portland, and then all of a sudden Chicago's going to panic and give him the max when maybe they weren't, or whatever, and he can get an extra year and way more money in Chicago and all that stuff. And
I did a whole video. That's why I did a whole video warning you guys so you guys can be ready for this to happen, because it's going to happen. And I should just start saying, inside sources tell me that it's going to happen. Even though it's literally just common sense and it is obvious if you pay attention. But inside sources tell me. I'm smart.
But yeah, so Zach LaVine will not be the first, and he will not, or the last, because this is going to happen with almost every big-time free agent this summer. And it's not even going to make sense.
We heard it with Miles Bridges, Zach LaVine. It'll happen with DeAndre Ayton.
And this is exactly why, for years, there's so many people give Olshey, and this happens with every single GM, right?
Mm-hmm.
why would he offer Ennis Cantor a max contract or whatever it was? It's because he's trying to screw the other team or help out an agent so he can get a favor for them down the road, right? Yeah. And why would he even discuss signing Chandler Parsons or Roy Hibbert, or the list goes on and on, right? Mm-hmm. Greg Monroe, why were we interested in these guys who weren't good, and why was Olshey always after these guys? It's because they're using you as leverage so that when you need something from them, you can actually get an interview with someone maybe that you wouldn't have gotten an interview with before. Now, Olshey's problem was he sucked at getting that return favor, right? So he would do all the favors and then get nothing back favor-wise.
What was the agent's name that he always did favors for? I forget his name. But wasn't he Krabs' agent?
Wortelstein or
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
But anyways, I guess the only favor he got returned was Cantor signing with us once he got cut from that same contract he signed to, right? So every agent does this. They expect certain teams to help them out in this situation, and they'll say okay, we're gonna float out this rumor about Zach LaVine, or they might even tell Cronin this, right? Yeah. But then they'll be just don't deny it, and we'll in turn give you this other client an opportunity to sign with you or something like that, right? Yeah, Charlie's exactly right. If James Harden doesn't pick up his option, it could be a sneaky landing spot for James Harden, right? Yeah. You're going to hear all kinds of crap like that this summer. It won't make any sense. Aren't there a lot of guards that are free agents? Kyrie Irving,
Beal.
Kyrie Irving and Bradley Beal are going to team up in Portland with Damian Lillard, right? With our $60 million in cap space.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll hear Kyrie Beal, but
I'm joking. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure you will hear Beal though.
Yeah, I made my point.
At some point it'll be Bradley Beal. Portland reported as a possible landing spot for Bradley Beal, sources tell Brian Windhorst. Or somebody like that. Ramona Shelburne. You know what I mean? Nobody who actually ever breaks anything. Just, they get scoops that don't usually pan out, but they have a platform and people pay attention to the scoops. And then you get a bunch of people Bradley Beal to Portland? What do you think about that? And I'm just yeah. Time to make a ramble because I'm uploading every day, so it makes it easy to come out with a video. It's time to come up with a ramble video saying how this is BS, and it's not much editing, no graphics. I needed a filler video. I was stuck on what to do, and that Zach LaVine thing actually hit at the perfect time. So thank you, Brian Windhorst. We had
a lot of stuff over the last couple days.
I know, dude. It's been action-packed, man. I'm living right now.
See, here's the thing, though. It's just believable enough because, Damon Levine were on an Olympic team together, right? And now we have Chauncey as our coach. He's a good motivator to get people to come here or whatever, right? Yeah, so that's the beauty of it from their agent's perspective is they can actually use that, and Chicago's not going to laugh it off because it might to them seem believable, right? So. But don't just think if you hear something like that, it automatically means that we're going to pursue Zach LaVine. Technically, we can't even talk to Zach LaVine or his agent yet because the free agency period hasn't even started. So it would be tampering if we got caught doing that anyway. But anyways, I don't think Cronin's going to risk tampering 2 months before free agency.
He's not even a year into his job. He already tampering.
At the time, that came out in the morning before he was officially got his contract. So I don't think he's going to tamper before he's actually the GM either. So any of these things that you hear right now, you hear, the Lakers are talking about, I forgot who they were talking about signing or whatever. It's so dumb, because it can't even happen yet. And, but let's get caught up on some donations.
Yeah, shout out to Brian Tadovich. He said it's a $5 dono. He says last dono because I have to work early. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Brian.
He says, who can we get with the TP besides Grant, and how would Warren fit, or possibly Batum? Have a good night, fellas. Thank you, Brian. Have a good rest of your night, man. Other TP targets could be Christian Wood fits into it, OG Anunoby fits into it, Boyan Bogdanovich fits into it. Bogdanovich fits into it. Who am I blanking on? There's somebody else that's like a decent name that I can't remember. Miles Turner fits into it, but that's not the name I was forgetting. Is there any others? Chat, Eric?
Jeremy
Grant, of course, yeah. But
yeah.
Other than Grant.
I mean, I'm operating that it's going to happen with Jeremy Grant, but yeah, it's anyone making under 20 million, so, or 20.9 million. Yeah, it can be anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
But so,
Davis Berton.
There's two things I can say. I mean, you're probably going to disagree with me, and trust me, from my point of view, this is not how I would do it. Because if I was the Blazers GM, I would do the exact opposite of what I'm about to say, right?
Yeah.
I do not believe we are going to take on money for a late pick or whatever for using the trade exceptions. Because if we were going to do that, it came out that we sacrificed draft capital for flexibility, right? Mm-hmm. So to do that would be like saying that you were wrong and admitting that those trades were bad because you didn't get enough draft capital out of them, and now you're getting more, I guess, and then you're taking on a bad contract to do so. So I think like the Bertons and the 25th pick or whatever pick they have, those type of trades, I would be absolutely floored, and I will tell you guys I was dead wrong about it if that happens, but I just don't see them ruining any of their flexibility for a mid to late first in that situation. Yep. I'd also be surprised if they traded back out of the first round because I feel like they need a good player too, and they need to hit a home run on a player. Now, you can make the argument that having two mid-teen picks, like the two Charlotte picks, give you two chances to hit that home run. But in theory, it's not as high level of a player as you would get with the 8th pick or whatever we end up getting. So even if we fall to 7 or 8, I still have a hard time believing we trade back. And then it would include the second rounders in that. I think we're either going to draft and stash or just trade out of the second round altogether because I just don't think they're looking at developmental guys from that perspective that much anymore.
Which would be a mistake. It's like,
yeah,
I mean, look at Trendon Watford. Trendon Watford could play a role for this team next year and help this team win basketball games. He was an undrafted rookie last year. Dude looks solid. If he comes back shooting the 3-ball, the dude's a good offensive player, can pass, can handle, and if he can shoot threes too, and he's a smart player, undrafted last year. Those types of players, like, so if you're talking about having an early second-round pick, imagine... I mean, like, look at Herb Jones this year, you know what I mean? So they definitely need to be doing their due diligence with that. Some other names that I brought up, Harrison Barnes is one of them. Danilo Gallinari is one of them. He only works before July 1st. After July 1st, he doesn't fit. And then Jonathan Isaac was the one that I was forgetting. Jonathan Isaac is the other one, which I know you probably don't want him, but we're going to have to talk about Jonathan Isaac at some point, I think, Eric. Do you want to talk about Jonathan Isaac now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Thoughts on Jonathan Isaac for the TP?
I wouldn't touch Jonathan Isaac. I mean, maybe if they gave him to us for free with nothing in return, but I don't see why they would do that. One, I don't think he would get along with players that stand up for certain rights that we have on our team, like a Damian Lillard. And I know Dame probably be man enough to put that stuff aside, but the politics in Portland are, I mean, this shouldn't come into play, but Portland is just a different city, man. And I just don't think that QAnon stuff would play here. He recently spoke at a QAnon convention.
Did he?
Yeah, stuff like that. So it's not just the politics and the standing for the national anthem and the unvaccinated stuff. It's the crazy conspiracy stuff and the, that kind of stuff. Like, I just don't think that jives well with the city, regardless of what your stances are on that. And even if we ignore all that, this is a guy who hurt his knee in 2020 and did not play for 2 seasons. In the seasons he did play, I believe the most games he's played outside of one season is 35 or something like that. I'll look it up real quick. So the idea of Jonathan Isaac on the court is, of course, intriguing because we need a big, athletic, rangy defender. But so, yeah, this is his games played. Rookie year, 27. Second year, 75. Yay, he played pretty much the whole season. Third year, 34. Fourth year, didn't play. Fifth year, didn't play. So that's what? 102, 136 games in 5 seasons he's played.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm uncomfortable with him I'm uncomfortable with it for some of the earlier reasons you stated. If he could play and be a lockdown defender and it could give us a chance at a championship, I can probably put that stuff aside. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. Some people are going to agree with him more in that regard and are going to be completely fine with him. That's absolutely your right or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not here to tell you anything politically, you know what I mean? But, like, I have my own opinions and whatnot, and this isn't the platform to share them, but, like, everybody has their own political opinions, you know? And it's obviously politics is super freaking divisive. That's why we don't talk about them. But when it comes to a guy like that and all that stuff, like, I understand if people don't want him for that reasons, and I understand if people don't care about those reasons. That is perfectly within your right. Everybody's going to have an opinion on it. You know what I mean? That's just the truth. So if you're talking about getting him for a second-round pick, I would, take the flyer, if we're not going to use our TPE. I'm not giving up a meaningful asset. So, I see people in here saying I'd take a flyer on him. Like, a flyer is different than giving up value for him. And I don't think you're going to be able to get Jonathan Isaac as a flyer where you're barely having to give anything up. And for a guy who's missed as much time as he has, I wouldn't do anything more than the flyer on him because he hasn't proven that he can stay on the court. This dude missed 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row, man. Like, at what point, Blazer fans want guys that can't get on the court and have serious knee problems? We don't know if he's going to be the same defensively after the injury issues he's had either. Well, so there's so many red flags in terms of just the on-the-court stuff, the injuries, that I'm not giving up serious value for him.
Well, that's my question. Who cares if he says he's fully healthy? Every single person in his position will try to say he's healthy to try to convince people he is. But here's the deal. Name players that have had 4 major injuries in 5 seasons and that turned out okay, got full athleticism back or whatever. Chances are he's not going to be the same athletically because of multiple injuries. We're not talking about, he blew out his knee one time. Maybe he just took an extra year off because the Magic sucked this year or whatever. He had injury problems before that one, right? Yeah. I mean, Derrick Rose, I guess you could say he got back to an okay position, but he's 25% of what he used to be. He was MVP level. Obviously, he won it in 2011, but now he's a 6th man. I guess he had some moments. He scored 50 points for Minnesota one game. I mean, he's had some good stretches of play, but he's nothing like he used to be. But this guy seriously cannot stay healthy. KD's a good example, but KD's 100 times better than Jonathan Isaac ever has been. So, yeah, that's a good example. But if you're expecting Jonathan Isaac to not only – I mean, let's be honest here. He's been good defensively in the NBA, but overall – his play has not been to the level of where people think it was. It was more the idea of him potentially being that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's summed up pretty well on him. Because obviously it's a little touchy with him and his,
all right,
his situation.
But... Charlie Bullock says Otto Porter. So would you want to have taken Otto Porter on his contract? And I don't think Otto Porter ever blew out his knee, right? Wasn't it didn't he have a back issue?
Yeah, it was a back issue, and I mean, I'm not paying Otto Porter Jr. $17 million.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I understand why people want him, but, like, saying his body's in very good shape, no, it's not. He got injured 4 out of 5 years. Like, just because he's skinnier.
You want it to be.
But, like, here's the thing. Bro, so wait. So he's skinnier, so his body's in really good shape despite him being injured 4 out of 5 years. But when it comes to Chet freaking Holmgren, who's never had injury issues, he's going to magically have injury issues because he's too skinny.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I mean, I understand that you think he might get over the injuries. That's fine, but don't say his body's in very good shape. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, being a tall guy...
No, DJ, I'm not saying you said that, but it's like I hear people argue, like, opposite sides of it, and it just confuses me. Because, like, here's what I think. If a player hasn't been injury prone, I'm not just going to say that they're injury prone or expect them to be injury prone. If a player has been injury prone, then I'm going to expect them to be injury prone. It's just based on how their history. Like, that's the only thing that matters for me. Because, like, if you look at, like, skinniness, some people think that skinny players are going to be more injury prone, but then some people think that skinny players are going to be lesser injury prone. And then, like, that's the thing. Like, Nurkic has been a little bit injury prone. Some people have said it's because he weighs too much. But then some of those same people will say that Chet doesn't weigh enough to not be injury prone, basically. So it's just... It's so confusing and it's so ambiguous that, like, my whole thing is just, has he been injury prone or has he not been injury prone? If he has, then I'm not going to really expect that to change when it's been to the extent of Jonathan Isaac's injuries.
And let me just say this for the record. I'm 6'6". I was super skinny my whole life until, dad bod took over. Yeah. But being in shape, being... skinny, being, muscular or whatever, like, when you're tall, it doesn't really matter. It takes a toll on your joints. Yeah. And if your joints aren't good to begin with, you're starting at a baseline that's so much lower than everyone else because of the injuries. Like, you can't then just magically be like, oh, okay, I'm in shape now, I'm never going to get injured again. Like, that's not how it works. Like, he's going to have issues just from being tall the rest of his life. Yeah. And combined with these injuries now are going to make it worse. And so he can be as healthy as he wants, but unfortunately, his body continually breaks down. Now, we could get lucky and trade for him, and he never gets hurt again. It's happened before. But to say it's going to happen or to expect that as the likely outcome seems very illogical to me.
Yeah, and there's no, like, the people will talk about healthy Jonathan Isaac, but I don't think there's a healthy Jonathan Isaac. Mm-hmm. There was a healthy Jonathan Isaac, but at this point, it's either an injured Jonathan Isaac or a post-injury Jonathan Isaac, because post-injury, I don't think he's going to be the same as healthy Jonathan Isaac. Like, I don't think he's going to be as laterally quick as he was. Like, that's just what happens when you deal with significant leg injuries, which he has. Like, that's the result of that. And here's the thing. It's not like the dude was particularly good offensively. Let me pull up his stats. It's been a while, so I don't just remember it off the top of my head. But Jonathan Isaac, the last year he played was 2019-2020. In 34 games, he shot 34% from three. For his career, is 33%, so he's not a good three-point shooter. He's below average. He's passable, but below average. From 2 for his career, he's right at 50%. Like, okay, if the dude lost a little bit of a step, he's probably going to have a harder time driving the basketball. It's not like this dude has ever been somebody that passes the ball or makes plays for others. So you're putting stock in a guy whose really only positive value is his defense, but it might not be as good and probably won't be as good after 2 significant injuries. That's not like somebody that's extremely valuable. So people love the idea of him, and I understand it, and I'm not saying it's not possible for him to realize some of his potential if he's able to get healthy. I just don't think he's going to get healthy. And I think that if you're taking that gamble and giving up a bunch of assets for that, the risk is far more likely than the reward in that situation.
And if he's showing that he is healthy and looking good, then why would Orlando give him away?
Exactly.
So they're gonna expect to get more.
If they're
from
trading him as a flyer, that should worry you, actually.
Right? Yeah, that should be concerning. But see, if I'm Orlando, I probably would have made him, or at least given him some minutes this year to try and get his value up. But I understand too, just sitting him out because it was kind of pointless to play him. But yeah, I would not just trade him away. I would try to get value for him down the road after you shown that he can be back on the court, instead of just being like, okay, we'll just give him away because we don't need him.
Yep. Anyway, thank you to Speaking Facts with a $5 dono. He says, my question is, what now? What is both of your realistic outcomes from all of this? We wait for the lottery. That's what now. I mean, I'm just chilling. I'm waiting for the lottery. And once we have the lottery, then we can start speculating as to what's going to happen, because obviously our pick is the biggest asset this offseason for us. So it's hard to say, if we end up at 1 and there's a good trade-down possibility to 3 where we can get another mid-first round pick, then, we'll talk about that trade-down potential. And okay, if we can get 3 and I don't know, 12 from OKC for 1, or 3, 20, and 25 from San Antonio for 1. Like, do we do that? And then what do we do with those assets? You know what I mean? So that's the thing, is we have to wait and see. And if we don't move up, it makes things pretty simple, because it's like we're going to be... I mean, we still have trade-down possibilities, but then it would just be a situation where I'm worried about trading the 7th or the 8th pick for Jeremy Grant. If we trade up, then it's going to be a lot more fun to talk about potential trade scenarios, and it's going to be more fun if we keep the pick, obviously. So, I mean, everything just hinges on May 17th, 4 days and like 18 hours from now. So we just wait for that. That's basically where we're at right now.
Yeah, so I'll kind of simplify it a little more than that. So
okay.
If we keep a pick, got to hit on it, right?
Yep.
So a lot hinges on that. If we trade it, it better be for a complete difference maker and worthy of giving up a whole tank job for. Jeremy Grant is not that player. So if we use that top 10 pick on Jeremy Grant and don't really do much else or have much else to do this summer, then that's tough. But so realistically, if coming from the perspective that we're most likely going to trade for Jeremy Grant, getting him for as least value as possible because he leveraged his way here would be ideal. And then also just hitting on that pick, as long as we do those two things, and then sign, just at least use our MLE on a capable rotation player, and then re-sign Nurk, re-sign Ant, maybe even re-sign Ingles for some depth down the road. That's probably the most realistic offseason. But you got to hit on your pick, and you got to, if you're trading for Grant, you can't overpay for him. And those are two things that I'm really worried about.
Yeah, I mean, if it's Milwaukee first and Keon Johnson for Jeremy Grant, and our pick moves up into the top 3, and we take Banchero, Chet, or Jabari, and then we sign a solid free agent with the MLE, I'm happy. Yep. I'm going into next year not as high on the team as I was this year, which might actually be nice. Just going into next year with no expectations, but it's going to be fun to watch Ant start next to Dame. It's going to be fun to see Dame play without no pain. It's going to be fun to see our draft pick, and then can Jeremy Grant actually be the piece that this team needs? We'll wait and see on that. And then you got, Josh Hart off the bench is going to be fun. Like, we'd be going into next year without a ton of pressure, not knowing what to expect, but with the roster that would be enjoyable for sure. That could make some noise. So that would be, I would be, after as bad as the deadline was, if that happens, like, okay, I'm happy. And it sounds like if we can just move into the top 3, and if Jeremy Grant truly is leveraging his way here, it sounds like that isn't maybe as far-fetched as you would think. I mean, it's just jump into the top 3, not overpaying for Jeremy Grant and him leveraging his way here and then just signing a competent free agent. Like, that's not that crazy. So there is some optimism left. It just would be so easy if we had a lot more assets, obviously. So, if we had the 8th pick from the Pelicans right now and sitting at 6 and 8, it's like, okay, can we trade 8 down for like, do we want to trade 8 down and then try and get a couple, like OKC has 12 and 30, maybe 8 down for 12 and 30, and then you trade the 12th pick for Jeremy Grant, I guess, and then you still have the 30th pick, and like, I don't know. Like, that's the thing. We'd have a lot more to talk about, so it just sucks that Cronin didn't back that up. That's why it's frustrating, but
yep.
I mean, there's still a chance for some positivity, obviously. Let's take a thought on this to end the stream, Eric.
David, you asked if Bobby Portis declined his player option, would you try to sign him on the MLE? Well, here's the problem. Milwaukee, he will opt out, and Milwaukee owns his early bird rights, which means they can sign him to a little more than the MLE.
Yep.
And so he would have to choose Portland for less money over staying somewhere, which he has publicly said that he loves playing for and has taken less money to get to this point where he could sign a bigger contract this offseason.
Yep. So Bobby Portis isn't a realistic option at all. Good point. I might need to do a video of unrealistic offseason targets for the Portland Trail Blazers. This is why they don't make sense. Just to cover guys like that, because obviously there's different situations across the league that matter. Anyway, Tankathon time. You can see how much time is left right here. 4 days, 17 hours, 27 minutes, 27 seconds. All right, let's just simulate this thing and see what we get. Fingers crossed for some good luck. 14's Cleveland, 13's Charlotte, 12 is the Thunder, 11's New York, 10 is Washington, 9 is San Antonio. So far, so good. Oh, it went down. 8 is the Pelicans. So far, really good. 7 is Detroit, which moved down 4 spots. Okay, so we moved up.
Let's go.
Imagine that. Like, nothing, and then 4 teams all next to each other jump up. That's wild. That's wild. That would be like the last team you would expect to see there at 7. At 6 you got Orlando, and at 5 you got Houston. So it's
Orlando, Houston, and Detroit. Oh, it's
5, 6, 7. Oh man, that would be hilarious. So you got OKC up there, you got Indiana up there, you got Portland up there, and you got Sacramento up there. So let's just see how this pans out. At 4 you got Sacramento. At 3 you got OKC. So it's down to Portland and Indiana.
The two teams. This will matter because we're hoping to catch them at 5, but maybe we'll get lucky and it didn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. So at 2, you got Portland. At 1, you got Indiana. Buzzkill for Eric.
And at 1, Indiana takes Keegan Murray.
Honestly, like, I could see Indiana taking Jaden Ivey at 1.
Yeah, I don't know about that. They have a ton of guards. I know they could trade him.
I don't think they're keeping Brogdon long term.
I know, but they have Duarte as well, who they drafted.
I think Duarte can play some 3, and he's score off the bench. I think Halliburton, Ivy, Duarte. Who else do they have?
Healed.
I think they try and trade him too.
I know they're
really
not going to try to trade him, but yeah.
Like, that's the thing. Everything's a flex. Here's why I think they might take Ivy is because Ivy grew up in Indiana, went to college in Indiana. Like, if you're a small market, they already went through Paul George wanting to leave. If you're a small market and you got a guy that you know is probably going to be loyal because he's from there and stayed there to go to college, never rule it out. I mean, LeBron left Cleveland, right, and grew up in Akron, but maybe that factors in a little bit.
Right, Trevin?
What did Trevin do?
I think they probably try to trade down.
Yeah. I mean, it's just interesting with them at 1 and us at 2, because I don't see any trade down possibility here. Like, if we were at 1, I would say maybe to OKC for 3 and 12, but at 2, I just don't. There's not enough seperation between who they'd get at 2 unless they really want Chet.
I'm taking someone, and I'm happy with it.
I mean, yeah, Indiana goes Jabari at 1. Probably, right?
I don't know.
That's what you said. Now you don't want him to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I guess.
So who are you taking it to once they take Jabari at 1?
I don't know yet. Ask me after the combine.
I am so what? You're gonna back out of it? Oh man,
I'm taking Bancaro. Fine. I just don't want to start.
I'm even more disappointed in you. Shouldn't have.
I'm not going to start an
argument.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have asked you that question, Eric. I'm just gonna bite my tongue. Really hard. Anyway,
Bancaro actually doesn't rhyme with ranchero because that's not how you pronounce it.
Yeah. So instead, just regret for Chet. Easy peasy. All right.
Take Scarpet too. That's good.
I mean, is there a trade down to 5 that makes sense? Houston has 5. No, not really.
What if we did that, traded down to 7 for Jeremy Grant?
Dude,
and 7.
I would be so pissed. It would be
like we
mad.
didn't move up and got Grant though.
Bro, but if we're at number 2.
No, I know. I would be mad too. I'm just saying I think that's how they would justify it. It's like, well, the biggest percentage chance we had was 7 anyway, so it's like we got the biggest percentage pick and added Grant for nothing.
Well, then you got to factor in the Pelicans pick that you lost, right? If we're playing that game.
I know. I'm just saying that. I could totally see Cronin up there like, oh, we had a chance to add a difference maker, and we just got the same pick we would have had anyway.
I will go off on Twitter if he uses some BS logic like that. I will.
Detroit wouldn't do that, right? Are you serious? Or are you talking
Detroit
about,
would do that in a heartbeat.
Are you talking about with Sadiqin? Yeah, okay.
Oh, with Sadiqin, I don't think they do that now. But with Jeremy and 7 for 2, they would absolutely do that. The thing is freaking Detroit fans think that we should have to trade them like Nasir Little and our pick for Jeremy Grant. They overvalue the hell out of him. It annoys me. But if we did 2 for 7 and Grant, I would be so sad. I'd be pissed. See, like, that's the thing is, there's a chance of having a pretty okay offseason and being happy going into next year. But, like, I feel like with Cronin at the helm, we're just teetering. And that's the thing is, I could see draft lottery. If the draft lottery went like this, it would be like, yes, we got the number 2 pick. But Detroit's a 7. Oh, no. Like, I just expect it, man.
Exactly.
Like, if Portland jumps into the top 4, I'm hoping that Detroit is with them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want Detroit and Portland to both be top 4 tomorrow. I do not want Portland to jump up in the top 4 and then Detroit to fall out of the top 4. I mean, I still want Portland to be the top 4, but if Detroit falls out, I'm just going to be worried that we're going to trade out of the top 4 and get Grant. If they're at 5, it's okay if it's Sharp, but 6 or 7, no.
So 2 for 5 and Grant, you're okay with?
I still don't like that, but if we, like, it wouldn't be as bad. It'd still be bad, but it wouldn't be as bad. Like, but anything below 5, I am just gonna lose my mind, dude. Yeah. Like, I could see if Detroit's 6 and we trade down from 2 to 6 for Grant and then draft Keegan Murray, I'm gonna be so pissed. Because my whole thing is maximizing the ceiling of this freaking team. And if we trade out of a top 2 pick down to take Keegan Murray so we can get Jeremy Grant, we're doing the exact opposite of that.
Mm-hmm. What if we traded 2 for 7 and Grant and then 7 for, 13 and 15 or whatever?
I'm still... that's just so gross. Like... If we, like, and then take Leonard Miller and Ousmane Dieng?
What if we got Ousmane Dieng, Leonard Miller, and Jeremy Grant?
Just take the obvious prospect. Like, take Jabari or Chet. Just make it simple on yourselves. And if Grant is truly leveraging himself to Portland, don't overpay, you dumbasses. It's not hard. Like, God, man. Bucks pick, Keon Johnson, throw in seconds if you're really desperate to throw in some extra value for Detroit Cronin, and just don't do something stupid.
Yeah. Well, that's what. Okay, if we do something dumb like that, we better make them take Bledsoe and not use the TPE then, right? Because that
Yeah.
saves us almost 4 million, 3.9 million from dead money from having to do that. And I know we don't have the contract or whatever to trade, so that might hurt us down the road.
Yeah.
But
How would you feel if it was 2 and Bledsoe for 7 and Grant, and then you trade 7 for OG and Anobi and use the TPE to absorb them?
so we had Grant and OG, and then got no picks.
Yeah.
Oh, I I think I'd rather have Cheddar, Jabari, or Follow.
Like, that would be better than. That would be better, like, than doing 2 and Bledsoe for 7 and Grant by itself.
Yeah, true.
Like, I would, like, if we're gonna do that, we might as well just go all in on guys that are already established and get a guy who makes perfect sense for us. Like, if we then flip 7 for OG in the first trade saved the TPE, I'd still be very uneasy about it. And it's like, wow, one of the guys we passed up on between Bankero, Jabari, and Chet, you know, like, assuming we passed up on 2 of them, one of those guys would end up being better than both OG and Jeremy Grant ever will be. And we'd sit there in the future like, dang, we could have had him.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we are with Sadiq Bey when we traded that pick for Rocco. And you really wanted Sadiq Bey in that draft. So, yeah. Anyway, we've been going for a while.
Wasn't meant to be.
This has been a fun stream. Anything else that you want to touch on or say for this one?
No, I mean, we'll see you guys on Monday, and I think you'll see a lot more nervousness then, right?
Yeah, it's the day before. It's the day before. I mean, I don't know. I've kept myself so busy lately, so I'm gonna get this video out tonight, and then tomorrow you have a rant video coming up, Eric. Is there any rants you don't want me to include?
I don't care.
Okay.
I'm
Eric,
sorry I haven't had time to look back for him.
it's all good. If anybody has any of their favorite Eric rants that they want to like timestamp or link for me to make it easier to put out that highlight video tomorrow, post them in the timestamps thread of our main Discord. And if you're not in our main Discord, I will plug a link in the chat.
People are asking what time we're gonna go live for the lottery. Probably like 4:30.
Is it at
right?
5? Yeah, if it's at like 30 minutes before the lottery is scheduled. So if this says lottery is at 5, we'll go live at 4:30. If you're on the East Coast and it says lottery's at 8, we'll go live at 7:30 your time. So, hopefully that's simple enough. Lottery is Tuesday. Yes, it is. And, yeah, anything else?
No, thanks everyone for watching. Have a good night, everyone. Good weekend, all that.
Yep, we'll catch you on Monday. Videos coming out this weekend. Hopefully you enjoy them. Rahi, I'm dropping the Shade and Sharp video in probably 45 minutes to an hour. Gotta record it, finish the graphics on it, so stay tuned for a Shade and Sharp video. And then until whenever we catch you next, hope life's good. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers!